This is the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting.
Morning, everyone. We'll call this Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on this Tuesday, July 21st. It is a little bit after 9, and the written materials completed of this meeting may be found in www County, Waupaca, Wisconsin, U.S. on the agenda and the minutes tab. Due to COVID-19, this meeting is conducted under Waupaca County Resolution Number 8, 2020-21. Please note the following information. This meeting will be broadcast remote access on live stream on YouTube. Participation and personnel permitted. The meeting will be conducted using the CDC and the DHS guidance regarding social distancing. Tables and chairs will be arranged accordingly. Face coverings are encouraged. Roll call, please.
Vasquez.
Here.
Boyer.
Here.
Craig, Mary.
Here.
Craig, Patricia.
Here.
Ellis.
Here.
Bedowitz.
Here.
Golding.
Here.
Hardy.
Here.
Yeager.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Keppen.
Here.
Kussman.
Here.
Lear.
Here.
McClone.
Here.
Morak.
Here.
Muck. Gerald Murphy.
Here.
Terry Murphy.
Here.
Newman.
Here.
Nygaard.
Here.
Pullman. Here. Ritchie. Supervisor Ritchie. Rowan.
Here.
Spearings.
Here.
Wengelski.
Here.
Will.
Here.
Zog.
Here.
We have 25 members present either in person or Zoom and 2 absent. Oh, and I'm sorry. And Muck has arrived, so 26 and 1.
Muck got held up by a train, I think. Okay, let's please stand for a moment of meditation and then the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic which is one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have the agenda that you scanned over. Is there a motion for approval? A motion by Mr. Zog and a second by Supervisor Lair. Any questions regarding that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. They are approved.
Chair Keppen, I'd like to make a correction on the minutes date is June 25th. My apologies, that was a typo on my part.
Okay, you heard the change in the minutes for the 25th of June. Is there a motion to approve those said minutes? A motion by Supervisor Lair and a second by Supervisor Vasquez. Any questions? Corrections? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we got resolutions. Number 7 is resolution number 9, 2020-2021. It's a donation acceptance, Park and Rec.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors will accept the donation of the open-sided picnic shelter with the approximate value of $24,000 for public use at the Crystal River Canoe and Kayak Access. Said acceptance will be final after the shelter is built as constructed for, by, and Bill and Maria Belkey using their personal funds.
A motion for approval. Motion by Mr. Zog, the second by Mr. Vasquez. Discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. It's carried. Thank you. Resolution 7B. It's number 10, 2020-2021. Comp Plan Amendment, Town of Larrabee.
So move to approve.
Supervisor Murphy approved, and a second by Supervisor Questman. Discussion, questions? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, we're down to ordinance number 8. 8A, 2020-705, amendment to chapter 34, petition number Z-014-20, Town of Farmington, Shelty Springs LLC for a zoning map amendment from the SR district to AWT district on approximately 15.34 acres. Oh, there he is.
Morning.
Morning, Ryan.
So this property owner is looking at establishing an ag-related use on the property, and since it's currently zoned sewer residential, it's required to have the rezone to go to AWT, where ag would land transition.
There's a motion by Mr. Johnson for approval, and a second by Mr.
Miguelski.
Ben. I haven't seen at the station lately. Wengelski. Any questions? Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're down to B. 2020-706, amendment to chapter 34, petition number Z-015-20, Town of Caledonia, J. Quella, for a zoning map amendment from AR district to AWT district on approximately 0.25 acres.
So this 0.25 acres is looking to get rezoned to AWT to make it so it's the same zoning district as the neighboring property with the intention of a future combination. They need to be the same zoning district in order for it to be the same parcel.
There's a motion by Mr. Bosquist and a second by Mr. Nygaard. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. 8C, 2020-707, amendment to chapter 34, petition number Z-016-20, Town of Larrabee, Gerard and Melinda Rohan, for a zoning map amendment from AR district to AWT district on approximately 21.5 acres.
So the Rohans are looking at establishing a new business on this property. It'd be a contractor shop. And in order to have the ability to establish that business, they first have to be rezoned to the AWT district. So that's why we're going to make retention AWT.
Need a motion for approval? Motion by Mr. Nygaard and a second by Mr. Wemigalski. Discussion? Questions? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, we're down to 8B, which is 2020-708. Amendment to Chapter 34, petition number Z-017-20, Town of Scandinavia, a Wasserud family IR trust for a zoning map amendment to AE district to RR-O district on approximately 6 acres.
So this property is in farm preservation, and so what they're looking at doing is they're segregating off the structures and allowing for future expansion, or not expansion, but future land division of that property. So that's why they need to rezone into rural residential overlay. That's a residential district for non-farm residences and farm preservation.
Motion by Mr. Nygaard for approval.
Correct.
And a second by Supervisor Lair. Discussion? Question? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're down to reports. Sheriff Tim Wills is here, our Waupaca County Sheriff, with an award.
Are we allowed to have Mark come up from WCA first, Diane? The award presentation, I thought we'd go a little longer, so it'd be at 9:30 start time.
There is a motion as such by Mr. Quistman and second by Mr.
Fedowitz?
Yeah, Fedowitz. Used to know him at one time. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Now it's laid on the table, right?
And my apologies, I gave them about a 9:30, thought we'd be ready. So I'm going to switch in the presentation for.
Okay, I want to introduce our special guests today. Some of you have never met them or heard them. First one is Mr. Mark O'Connell, who I believe joined the WCA, Wisconsin County Association, about 1998. And the association was in dire straits at the time. I mean, dire straits. Financially, too. Mr. O'Connell took over the WCA and made it one of the most successful organizations in the state of Wisconsin. It's really taken care of 72 counties in advice, health, you name it. Legislation, lobbying. Mark is a very special guy. I got to spend time with him from 2004 on. I served on his board for many years and was honored to be the president of the WCA around 2011 and worked with Mark very closely. He's the best leader I've ever been around. He gets things done. He's got full of energy. I don't know how he does it, but I'll tell you, that man is something else. And I'm going to bring you up Mr. Mark O'Connell. You're going to be a treat to hear. Mr. O'Connell.
Mr. Chairman, will you please assist the body? Might want to take the previous item off the table. It appears our guest is here to receive the award. If you'd like to.
That motion?
I'll make that
There's
motion.
a motion by Mr. Vasquez and a second by Supervisor Lair. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, Sheriff. He left again.
Another motion.
Oh, he is back, okay.
Apparently he took a restroom break. I apologize.
It's completely me, Tim. I told you at the time.
All he has
It's
to
on
do
me.
back at county.
We have it kind of turned sideways because then the Zoom people can also see, just so you know.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, County Board.
Morning. Sure he's okay?
Uncomfortable.
Our highway commissioner, our maintenance director are tied for suntans. You just got back from vacation, right, Casey?
Yes, but I also work outside a lot too. So.
Good. How long has it been here?
Since we started.
You know, All yours, Sheriff.
Okay, thank you. So oftentimes, we have ordinary people do extraordinary actions, such as saving a life. So today, we are here to present this young man here, Mason, an award for saving a life. Mason had the courage to save his friend's life. So what I'm going to do is give a little synopsis of what happened, and then I'll present the award. And family members, if you want pictures, can you wait around and get pictures after the board meeting? So on Wednesday, May 27th, 2020, at approximately 3:59 p.m., Waupaca County Communications Center received a call of a possible drowning at Casey Lake in the town of Waupaca, the county of Waupaca. Deputy arrived and could not locate anyone in distress. There was two boaters there, or a boat with two gentlemen in, and they said that there was, they heard some young males yelling for help. The officer was able to locate a vehicle on County Highway E near Casey Lake. When he approached the vehicle, he found a driver, Mason, and his friend Parker. Go ahead, Parker, raise your hand. Mason explained that Parker and him were swimming. Parker became distressed, went under the water for approximately 2 to 5 minutes. Mason was able to swim out, pull him to shore. He said that Parker had problems breathing. He performed CPR. Thus, in my eyes and everyone else's, saving his life. The reason Mason had left Casey Lake was because of phone service. He was unable to get a hold of 911 until he pulled out on the County Highway E. Parker was transported by ambulance to Waupaca, having subsequently released. The quick thinking, the response, recognition of medical emergency, immediate action, and effective CPR resulted in saving Parker's life. And because of Mason's actions, Parker's mom and dad have their son, and you as your friend. Thank you. This is a word. It reads, Civil Medal Gallantry. Highly commended to Mason Cadeau. In recognition of your exemplary acts of bravery presented by Sheriff Timothy Wills on behalf of the Waupaca County Sheriff's Department. I'd like to present the challenge coins, one being the Waupaca County one, for integrity, respect, and excellence, along with the work challenge coin. Ben, anything you'd like to say? Parker, is there anything you'd like to say?
But thank you for just saving my life. I appreciate it.
Congratulations. You are the type of heroes we like to see. Thank you so much for what you've done. Your family really thanks. Okay, Mr. O'Connell, I got to give you the intro all over again. Here's Mr. Mark O'Connell from the Wisconsin County Association, Executive Director.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My friends in the back of the room, I just indicated it's going to be very difficult to follow the Sheriff Mason and Parker.
Mr. Chairman, so good to see you. So good to see so many of my friends here on the county board and hear from some that are on the call. I know my good friend Pat Craig is zooming in. I think she can probably see me, but I can't see her. So many department heads. It's been a while since I've been up here in Waupaca County. We've talked about this before, and for those of you who are new, I guess this might be new information, but for those of you that have been on board for quite some time, you already know. You have got some of the best department heads and constitutional officers in the state of Wisconsin, and I see all of them. They are really, really good. It's why Waupaca County is run so well. The board sets the policy, sets the direction, determines the compass, and your department heads carry out your wishes, and they do it very, very well. And it's a pleasure to work with them. Quick update from what's going on in Madison, and then we're going to have my good colleague and friend, Dale Knapp, talk to us about revenue and what COVID-19 has done to our revenue picture. But a couple updates from Madison and from Washington, D.C. We were supposed to interact pre-COVID. Scheduling issues pushed the date out, and now here it is in July, and so we're together. But prior to this, we would have had a normal update on legislative activities. We've been talking about the Senate coming back to pass 100+ bills that the Assembly passed. We talk about various pieces of legislation that are important to county government. We'd have normal sort of update. We probably talk a little bit about the elections, but then COVID hit in mid-March, and everything changed. Everything. Public sector, private sector, the nation, just everything. I would say, from my perspective, when we have a challenge like this, especially a pandemic that is worldwide in nature and dramatically impacting our country, there are those that step forward and those that fade back. It has been my observation that in Wisconsin, county government has stepped forward. Not everyone likes all the decisions. Not all the decisions are popular. Almost every one of them has some controversy related to it. But stepping forward and leading in a time of challenge shows what those who step forward are made of. And in this case, it's you, the Waupaca County Board, your leadership, Chairman Kevin. None of what we do right now is easy. Masks, no masks, distancing, not distancing, interactions in the public by those who attach some political motivation to one activity or another. It's difficult, it's tense, it's family members against one another, friends with different viewpoints, strenuous. But to your credit, this is an example. I would like to have been in the county boardroom upstairs, but you have done great things. We don't have the electronic voting board. We're voting by voice. Today we had all votes unanimous. I suspect that's been mostly the case between when COVID started and now. There's a cohesiveness. It brings us together. Why? Because we have a common goal. Serve the citizens of this county in the best manner we can. Differences that may have seemed major pre-COVID are now minor because we have higher aspirations. We have bigger fish to fry, and you are doing that. Quick update on Madison and Washington, D.C. There are roughly 100, a little over 100 bills that the Assembly passed that the Senate was supposed to take up before COVID. The Senate will come back, the state Senate will come back, and they will take up a good number of those bills, a few of which that we care about. And they will likely take them up sometime November, maybe December, might be a lame duck session, but they will likely take them up. There'll be some controversy, there'll be some speeches, but they will pass most of those bills. The bigger issue, however, is going on in Washington, D.C. We have had, depending upon how you want to count them, 3 or 4 stimulus packages related to COVID. There is a lot of conversation about one more stimulus package. The House in DC passed a stimulus package of roughly $3 trillion, which to put in perspective is 15% of the current national debt that we count in just a short 3-month period. And I don't mean to get, we talked about this before, I don't mean to harp on this, but we've got $23 trillion of debt as a nation. And 23 trillion is a gigantic number. $23 trillion of debt as a nation that we count. The real number is more like 80 trillion, $80 trillion. And this COVID, while it is definitely a challenge, and a lot of folks need help, but when we pass legislation that accounts for 15% increase in the debt that we count from 20 to 23, we had better come out of this with guns blazing and our horses galloping fast, because we are putting a tremendous burden on those that follow us. We have every obligation, duty, responsibility to expend dollars properly, efficiently. And whatever we might think about what Congress did in the first packages, once they were passed, it is our obligation as Wisconsinites to ensure that Wisconsin gets their fair share. And that is the case with this next, perhaps currently talked about final COVID relief package. And in that package, there is conversation, significant conversation, about a portion of that package going directly to, well, through the states, to city, town, village, county, school district, local governments, in recognition of revenue loss. And rather than go through some kind of a calculation on exactly how much revenue you have lost, and you're going to hear from Dale just momentarily about just how much you have or have not lost in Waupaca County, the dollars would flow through the state, be distributed by a formula, and you would have dollars available to help you get through COVID. Now, the House passed a package which included that. The Senate is not interested, at least publicly, in allocating a portion of the final COVID relief package to state and local government. The White House initially said, not interested, not on the table, now has said, maybe yes. What's going to happen in the next month or so is that the White House and the Senate Republicans are going to get together and stake out a territory. It will likely not include any dollars for state and local governments. The House has already staked out their territory, and a major chunk of their package will include, or does include, state and local government relief. Then the negotiations will start, perhaps as early as later this week. I am cautiously optimistic that the portion of the House package allocating a chunk of dollars to state and local governments in some form will come true. That will have to be, it will only happen if there are provisions made on business support, some liability issues for business, things that many folks would look at and say, well, that makes some sense. We could work with that. But their parties are staking out their negotiating territories. And so in the next 2, 3, possibly 4 weeks, Congress is expected to leave at the end of August. They may likely stay on a little bit longer. I think the likelihood of a package is very high, and the likelihood of a portion of it, a portion of the package, including state and local revenue loss recognition distributed by formula through the states, is we may be approaching 50-50 or better at this point in time. So somewhat optimistic. On an association note, just to give you kind of a brief snapshot of where the association is, all of our staff are still working. They are working remotely, mostly. I'm in the office every day. We have 1 or 2 people that come in 1 or 2 days a week. Otherwise, everyone is working remotely. If you call our office, you won't even know we're not there. We set up the phone system so that everyone answers their phone from their home. They can work remotely, and it's all working quite well. Will it work that well forever? I'm not sure that that's the forever setup, but it's working right now. For those that are relatively new on the board, and maybe those that perhaps have forgotten, WisPolitics in Wheeler is available to everyone in county government. So if you are not getting Politics in Wheeler and all of the material that the association has puts out, please call my office, call our office, talk to me. All you need to do is give me an email address and I'll make sure you get it. Just as an example, the Politics and Wheeler report, if you were to pay for them, you would pay $3,000 for those news services, which are very insightful, very good. But by virtue of Waupaca County being a member of the association, anyone in county government, anyone that receives a paycheck that says Waupaca County on it, can get those services free of charge. We take care of that as the association. So if you're not getting it, you should get it. Just give me an email address and we'll take care of that. All of the staff are available all the time on any question, any issue, Zoom meeting, committee meeting. If you'd like us in person, we'll still come out in person. The association staff is still 100% available to all membership all the time. That's why we have this meeting here today. I'll stop right there and ask if there are any questions on any topic related to federal, state, the association, anything at all that I can expound upon. The chairman did say that we have very little on the agenda, so I could be here all day if you wish. So anything at all, any issues?
Sure, you got some questions, now's a chance.
While you're thinking of it, there is something we did recently. We created this public health work group to try to work through where the path forward is in regard to public health and public health ordinances. Many counties do not have a local health officer ordinance, which allows the local health officer to engage in activity to make sure the community is safe, but you have to have a body of law called the ordinance to point to, which provides some teeth. We assembled a work group made up of public health professionals, legal professionals, corporation counsel, city attorneys, the restaurant association, Sheriff Paul Sasenka from Bayfield County is on the committee. Andy Phillips, our general counsel, is on the committee. My colleague Sarah Diedrich Hasdorf, human service person, chairs the committee. This committee, I asked them to look at what kind of body of knowledge could we create which would assist local units of government, cities and counties, in either modifying or a current ordinance or creating an ordinance, allocating or conveying power to a local health officer, which would accomplish four things, or with four things in mind. One, whatever we do should protect public health, clearly, number one. Number two, it needs to be enforceable. In other words, indicating that if you don't wear a mask inside of your home, you get a $300 fine. That's not really enforceable. So there's not much use to that. So it should be enforceable. Number two or three, it should be practical. In other words, it needs to be understandable, be able to be implemented, not so complicated that you can't practically implement. And then lastly, and I think this is critically important, whatever it is we do in regard to local health officer duties, responsibilities, capacity, it needs to be accepted generally by the public. And what do I mean by that? Not that that we should not do something that the public doesn't like, but we need to do something that the public says, that makes sense to me. If you go too far, the public resists, and then we have no one abiding by anything, and law enforcement with a giant problem on their hands about how to enforce something that nobody is abiding by. We actually need voluntary compliance with whatever we do in public health. And the way you get that is by having the public saying, I get it. You've explained this to me. I understand it. I can live with that. That makes sense to me. Social distancing, 6 feet apart. The public has generally said, yeah, okay, that makes some sense. Yep. Public places, some stores say, if you're going to enter my premises, you need to wear a mask. Generally, people say, okay, yeah, I can buy that. That makes sense to me. I can do that. Grocery stores and so on. Saying that you need to wear a mask inside your home if you have someone outside your family there, and if not, there's going to be a fine. That's where the public says, well, wait a minute. You may have gone too far. And if we go too far, then we lose the benefit that we got on the first two items. So that last item, accepted by the public through mostly voluntary compliance, is critical. That's what the committee was charged with. Those are the 4 guideposts that I've asked them to keep in mind as they move forward. And in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, they will come up with this body of knowledge that we will then convey to all cities and counties, for each city and or county to do what it is they believe is best for their jurisdiction. This is not prescriptive saying you ought to do this. Here's the ordinance, plug in your county name. It's not like that. It is going to be this is a body of knowledge that you can use as you determine what is best for you. And that might be different than your neighbors. It might be different than municipalities within Waupaca County, but it is for your use. Some counties or cities will say, this is really good information. I'm not using any of it. Some will say, really good information. I think I'm going to formulate or modify my current ordinance that takes into account some of the things that this committee brought up. And a bunch of folks will be in between. But this body of knowledge is available for all of county government. Much like almost all of the information in county at the association, we can provide it, but we are clear on the distinction between policymaker and staff. We are staff. We do not make decisions. You are policymakers. You make decisions. Our job is to provide you with information so you can make a good decision. And whether staff likes it or not is irrelevant. Once you make it, it is our job as staff to carry it out. And I am crystal clear on that distinction between policymaker and staff, with our WCA board and the WCA staff, and with county government policymakers such as you and your staff in Waupaca County. When the distinction is clear and it's well understood, that is when you have efficiency and productivity and a harmonious county. You have that in Waupaca County. Yeah, there's troubles here and there, but you have it in Waupaca County, and we have it at the association. Any comments, thoughts, questions, issues, anything at all? Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
I have a question not on that.
Yes, sir.
I have a question that in general, it was thought that if the Senate came back, any bills with monetary concern probably wouldn't get passed because of revenue shortages potential. But now that you mentioned about the federal government looking at reimbursing, how do you look at this 2 things? I mean, you think that the Senate will enact some of those bills that had money attached or not?
That's a very good question. The federal package, if it passes with a state and local revenue loss recognition element to it, then the state of Wisconsin, as an example, they would get, let's say, $100. $50 might go to all the locals, and the state would have $50 in its pocket. That's one-time money. So if we have a one-time hit, then legislation in those 100 bills that the Assembly passed that required one-time money, they might still go forward. But I think the Senate will look very carefully at any piece of legislation that the Assembly passed which has ongoing revenue demands, but we don't have, we're uncomfortable with the ongoing revenue coming in. Now, even that is dicey because we are, at some point in time, COVID is going to be addressed in some way. Either we're going to have a vaccine, either we have herd immunity, or I wouldn't say it goes away, but it becomes a much less of an issue. At some point in time, it will be addressed in some way. And then we will make a move toward something that we might recognize as somewhat normal. And when that happens, then revenues return. So the Senate will look at each piece of legislation that the Assembly passed, and in this next budget, the governor and the Assembly and the House and the Senate will all look at it. What are our ongoing revenue streams? What is the projection for revenue? And that will dictate what happens in the budget. We are very concerned that in this next budget, and it's not a fault of anyone, but we think in 2-year increments. We have a 2-year budget, so we think in 2-year increments. This next budget is going to be very difficult for the state because we will probably not come back like after a normal recession as quickly as we would hope. Therefore, revenues will not come back as quickly, and the state may be looking at cuts. I would suggest to you, it's one of the reasons, among many, it's one of the reasons that former Governor Tommy Thompson was selected as the interim president of the University of Wisconsin system. Why? because of all the large chunks of dollars in the state budget, university is a very large one. For those of us that have been around this state for a long time, and I started way back in 1986 working for Tommy Thompson, it is very hard to say no to Tommy Thompson. So when he is interim president of the university system and there is a cut that is proposed for the system, I think you are going to see a very persuasive university system say, wait a minute, that's really the fuel for our economic engine for the state, where we educate the smart young talent, which is a fuel for the private sector where they can utilize to generate profit and employ people. So that may not be an area which is suitable for cuts. I think we're going to see things like that transpire. Well, when that happens, to be very parochial about it, if you're not going to cut the university system, where are the other large pots of money? Well, that's where local government comes into play. K-12, which is probably going to be a very difficult sell with the former DPI superintendent as governor. So that leaves precious few areas to cut. That's why right now, even today, we are meeting with legislators in preparation and instilling in them the importance of local government if we want to position our state for future success. We're talking with them now so we don't get the kinds of cuts that some people are talking about in the next budget. It's long-term thinking. I'll tell you, it's one of the things that we do as an association, I think, very well. We think long-term, way out. We're having conversations today with legislators purposefully that I will refer to in 18 months. Remember back in July, remember in August of 2020, when we talked about this and you indicated we're going to go in this direction and we were supportive. Well, now it's December of 21 and we can't go back on our word. We're having those conversations right now that we're going to refer to later. We're pretty good at putting a brick in place today on which we're going to build a house in the future. Those don't always fit 2-year time increments. They sometimes go much longer than that. So that's a long answer, but the federal package will alleviate, at least temporarily, especially in a 2-year window, the need for extensive cuts if it happens and to what extent. But the numbers that the feds are talking about are very big numbers. These are, they're large numbers. I mean, for example, one scenario that I saw, this is not $200,000 to Waupaca County. If one of the scenarios I saw in the original House package with that particular distribution formula, you're talking $2 million to Waupaca County. $2 million. It's one-time money, but that's a lot. Now, are we going to get to that point? There's going to be a lot of negotiation. Things are going to get whittled down. I mean, it's not even a guarantee that it's going to be in the package. I'm pretty optimistic about it, but we'll see about that.
Mr. O'Connell,
Yes, sir.
There's been rumors and talking about cuts coming, probably will. I understand that there's a good chance of shared revenue getting cut.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if shared revenue took a hit. It's always talked about. I'd be very surprised. We've had conversations, 1,000 conversations on this issue. And if shared revenue gets cut, just to put it in perspective, and we care about our city and town friends quite a lot. We're not going to be successful as counties unless our cities and towns and private sector are successful. So we're not so blinded that we need to care only about counties and the cities are on their own. No, we care about our cities as well. Shared revenue, counties get $900 some million. Counties get 130, 40 million dollars of it. It's mostly a city revenue stream. Yet we still care, not just for the $140 million of county money, but because if the cities get hurt, that affects all of us. So we care about it. We're lobbying for it. And I'd be surprised if there was it will be mentioned, but I'd be surprised if there was a serious run at cutting shared revenue. Now, they may have to look in that area if we are really in dire straits as a state. I'm not anticipating that, but we are lobbying that. with our cities.
Questions? Joanne?
Joyce. Joyce. Supervisor Boyer?
Boyer?
Do you happen to know how many counties have adopted these ordinances?
The question was, do we know how many counties have adopted a countywide mask ordinance? I do not know the number. It is very few. There have been some that have strongly recommended, but it was only a recommendation. The issue, it really is, it's difficult. We have to have a body of law that we can refer to that gives us the authority to do that. And Chapter 252 provides a fair amount of authority. A countywide mask ordinance has not been, or mask directive has not been challenged. So it's somewhat unclear if it were challenged, if Chapter 252 of state statute provides us the legal cover to do that. An ordinance, given the Supreme Court decision about a month ago now, it puts in question exactly what authority a local health officer has. The Supreme Court decision clarified some things and greatly confused others. So it's not crystal clear exactly where the line of authority is and what it is we can and cannot do. Now, we're providing guidance on virtually everything you could think of related to public health. And if you have specific questions about certain language of your ordinance or whether it was it's possible in Waupaca County, please give our office a call and I'll put our general counsel on the job. Let me add this. I am personally very supportive of public health. I have said on countless occasions, as the saying goes, public health saved your life today. You just didn't know it. But now during the pandemic, public health saved lives today, and we do know it. So it's a very difficult area because it's very easy to say public health is advocating this. Well, I'm not really personally affected. Do I really need to abide by it? Is it really that important? It's easy to say that, but public health has a very, very difficult job. And we have asked our public health professionals to not only be professionals in the area of public health, now we've asked them to be experts in public communication, in talking to the press, and we've asked them to be lobbyists in convincing the citizenry. It's way too much of one person. So I have great sympathy for our public health professionals. We're trying to do everything we can to assist counties in making the decision that they believe is best for them. And sometimes that is relying on Chapter 252. Sometimes it is their own individual ordinance, which is why we put the Public Health Committee together. But I don't know the answer to exactly how many counties have implemented a countywide mask order, but I think it's a very few. Dane, Milwaukee, I'm not sure if Outagamie did or not, City of Milwaukee. And keep in mind, if we did so, it would only impact the unincorporated areas of a county. The city is going to be responsible, City of Waupaca, the city is responsible for City of Waupaca. So whether our countywide order would impact within city limits, there is some question to that legally. So long answer to say, I don't know. I apologize.
Supervisor Yeager.
Yes, sir.
Do you by any chance, I know we're halfway through the year. Yeah, predicted revenue for 2020 versus what the revenue is coming in now. Is there any 75% of it, or do you have any idea?
Yes, I have some idea, but Dale Knapp has an even better idea, and that's what he's going to talk about here momentarily. He will tell you to the penny what you're going to get for the rest of the year. It's an estimate. Because Dale is an economist, so just like the people who predict the weather, you don't have to be right, and they rarely are. But Dale will give us, he's developed some really good tools in predicting and projecting what our sales tax revenue is going to look like. Lots of variables and things are definitely going to change, but Dale's going to walk through some of that for us momentarily.
Any other questions for Mark before Mark brings Dale up? Okay, let me introduce Dale Knapp. Many of you for many years relied upon this
a thing called the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance. They were sort of the gold standard in statistics and factual information related to the state's economy, workforce, revenues, expenditures. They were it. Todd Berry was the head of the Taxpayers Alliance for a long time, a good friend of mine, very smart man. And he would many times make presentations. Many of you heard presentations at the WCA conference or legislative exchange or other venues. Todd would speak on numbers and statistics and factual information and reports that were produced by the Taxpayers Alliance, but the person that actually had their hands on the work and did all the work was a person named Dale Knapp. That's my colleague Dale. When the Taxpayers Alliance merged with the Policy Forum out of Milwaukee, that created opportunities. And that was an opportunity for Dale to join the Wisconsin Counties team. So he did. And we created this element of the association, a research element division called Forward Analytics. So you likely have seen these reports. We've done a fair amount on workforce. We've done some on revenue projections. There have been tools that have been sent out electronically for you to project your own sales taxes. That is all produced by this division called Forward Analytics within the association. When I say division, I mean Dale. It's a one-person division, but he's very good at what he does. I have often introduced Dale, and I know he doesn't like it. Clearly the smartest research person in the state of Wisconsin, and I would suggest likely one of the smartest in the country. So with that, Dale is going to walk through a presentation on screen, and I encourage you to interrupt Dale with any questions about anything you see, and he'll address and talk about as long as you wish. Fred, did you have a question? No? Okay. Okay, that's it.
Mark, actually, I do have a question
Yes.
from Mark Sether, our treasurer. He's via Zoom on the phone. He asked if he could ask you a
Sure.
question. Go ahead, Mark Sether. Yep. We cannot hear you if you're muted. If you want to type it in the chat, I can ask. Sorry.
It's okay.
The new day and age here.
I think your
Okay.
setup here is really impressive. I mean, that's
That's
We're
kudos to the gentleman that's on the floor right here. Thank you, by the way, while we're waiting for Mark to type, to Jesse and the maintenance crew for all the work they did with the mic.
it's really good. Audio is great. Setup is excellent.
Need a new stand for the mic, unfortunately.
I can get a little shorter, I guess.
No, we're very fortunate to have this room down here.
Yeah.
Use it for many, many meetings.
All right, he's either not fast typer or.
Maybe no.
So this is this looks like a Zoom.
Yes, this is a Zoom.
Yeah.
We shoot live to YouTube.
Okay.
So,
We use Zoom at the association as well. I know some state offices are not permitted to use Zoom because of potential hacks and people Zoom bombing in. I know the Department of Transportation, which I have many conversations with, they cannot use Zoom. So they use something else, WebEx or something. But Zoom is so easy to use. It's really convenient.
Mark, I was just curious about the potential of the WCA conference.
Oh, good question. I should have mentioned that. We had a conversation about this at the recent WCA board meeting where we were kind of set up like this. We are currently scheduled to have a conference, in-person conference, end of September. We will make a decision on whether that in-person conference continues by the end of the month. I would suggest to you that given the conversations and opinions that have been shared, I'd say it's probably 80% likely that we will not have an end of September conference, but we will postpone it. Cancel it, but postpone it. Maybe we'll expand the February event. I'm not sure, but at this point, we're certainly leaning toward not having an in-person event at this time. We will have a business meeting. That will be some kind of a modified Zoom meeting, so you can take action on resolutions. The Chairman Kevin will be on that meeting, but at this point, we're probably not going to have an in-person. Part of it's the demographics of the membership. We'd be one of the few organizations that would move forward with a conference. So a lot of folks, many folks have said, if you have a conference, I will definitely come. But if you don't, I absolutely understand why. So that's kind of the general sentiment. Is there a question?
Yes, the question is, as being noted by Mark, the loss of revenue to the state of Wisconsin and the pending costs to the counties, obviously Waupaca County are priority. You're discussing the possibility of decrease or no change in shared revenues. So where do you anticipate the funds to come from? In my area, my revenue budget in terms of investment income has taken huge hits in 2020 and see minimal returns in 2021.
Yeah, so it's a good question. If we're going to have a reduction, if the reductions are going to occur, I would say it's likely that the legislature, assuming for a moment that we have no change in power in the legislature may well look at some kind of a limiting of the increase in K-12. There may be some other projections that may differ with the governor's projections. There may be a proposal to address UW in some manner. There'll be some tightening of belts among virtually all state agencies. So state operations will take a hit. We may not see as many or as great an increase in some of the aid programs to local units of government that we otherwise might have anticipated. So we're likely to see that. We would likely see it, depending upon the level of the problem. We might see delays in some payments, delays in some projects, delays in maintenance, delays in a whole host of areas. That may well be the case. Of course, the other side of the equation is, what about increased revenue? I would not anticipate any revenue enhancements occurring in a state budget anytime soon. However, the highly respected National Tax Federation folks just put on a webinar with the Badger Institute, which is a conservative think tank out of southeast Wisconsin. And they indicated, when you look at our tax structure, and these were not their words, these are my words. We're out of balance. We're relatively heavy on property, relatively heavy on income, but we're low on sales. So one thing that the Federation indicated, or the speaker from the Federation indicated, is that if you're going to look at a modified tax mix, which might make some sense, given the way the economy has changed, and we talked about this years ago, by the way, you would expand the basket of goods and services on which you apply a sales tax to link it to the economy. And if you did that, you could actually lower the rate, even though we are low compared to our surrounding states. You could lower the rate, link it to our economy, and generate additional dollars in the future. Now, are we likely to do that? That's a big change. And government is used to incremental change, not big change. But the conservative taxpayer federation has, or tax foundation, what's it? Tax foundation. They've indicated that is something that you would want to look at. And we've talked about this before. For those of you who are new, you may not have heard it, but if you go to a health club, you pay no sales tax. If you go get your hair cut, you pay no sales tax. Go to a salon, you pay no sales tax. You listen to a live band, you pay no sales tax. You stop at Walgreens for over-the-counter cold medication for your child or grandchild, you pay sales tax. We tax things you can touch and feel and drop. We don't really tax things that you consume in the service arena. And that is inconsistent with our economy. In our economy, if you look at the trend line of our economy and what makes it up, service, even though we're a heavy manufacturing state, we are ever so steadily moving toward a service-based economy, like the rest of this nation. Yet our tax structure is one where it taxes things that you can touch and feel. If you want to link those two up, you either have to modify our economy to go back to 1950, or modify your tax structure to bring it in line with today's new millennium knowledge technology-based economy, where services are a big part of our economy. If you did that, you could actually, as I indicated, you could lower the rate and generate more revenue. But more importantly, you would position your state for future reliable revenue, given the conduct of today's society. And I don't mean today's society like the past 2 years. Today's society as we moved for the past 40 years. So it's not a one-time little blip trend. It's clearly the trend of our nation and our economy. Are we likely to see that in this budget? No. Are we likely to have conversation about it? Yes. But that other side of the equation of the increased revenue, probably not much of a conversation. Yes.
We've got time for one more question. What do you see as far as gasoline tax and fuel tax to help us on roads and potential of electric cars, changing how that works?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Secretary Craig Thompson, and many of you know Craig Thompson, he was our the legislative director for the Counties Association years ago. Good, very good, close friend of mine. He's now Secretary of Transportation. Craig has been on board of increased sales fuel tax for quite some time. When you look at the federal fuel tax and the federal transportation fuel tax kitty, it is in horrible shape. When you look at our revenue stream, given what we have in for fuel tax revenues, we need to be thinking of alternatives to supplement what it is we're getting. Now, we're at roughly, I think it's 31 cents gas tax, something like that, 32 maybe, which is high. That is high. But we are low on fees. I mean, we have, even though we say, gee, $125 to register my vehicle, that seems a lot high. Well, if you're out on the East Coast, you might be paying $600 to register your vehicle. And in some cases, depends upon the value of the vehicle. So, but gas taxes are lower. We're more heavily reliant on gas taxes. We did increase the registration fee, but that only impacted Wisconsin people. If you increase the fuel tax, you get more than Wisconsin people feeding into the system. Are we likely to see a fuel tax increase? I would say that is not very likely, although it depends on the makeup of the Senate. Speaker Voss, the top person in the Assembly, one of the most powerful people in the state of Wisconsin, he has been in favor of increased revenues for transportation. It has been the state Senate that has been reluctant in that area. Now the state Senate, the face of the state Senate is going to change a little bit. So we might see some movement in that area depending upon what the Senate looks like. I would say in the transportation arena though, Speaker Voss has been an absolute champion on infrastructure and investment of infrastructure and pro-transportation. He has been just incredibly supportive, just great. Would we see something in this next budget? Depends on the makeup of the Senate. Maybe not from the governor for political reasons. People would accuse him of trying to increase taxes, so on and so on. But in the Assembly, they may put something in, and then it's a debate between the Senate and the Assembly. So it's possible.
Mark, Mark Sether, I'm sorry, is that okay? Mark Sether actually had another question. Do you mind if I ask for him? I think you answered he was asking about sales tax change, and I think you talked about that. He also asked any increase in real estate taxes, because that would be tough, obviously, on our tax base.
Well, real estate taxes, I mean, it's a local decision, although we are under caps. So if the question is, are we likely to see a relief in any sort of restrictions? Not likely. Would we see some change in the TIF area, for example? That's possible. Will we see any large-scale change, like it was suggested years ago for the state of Wisconsin? If it is a human-based activity, it should be state revenues from income and sales. And if it is a property-based activity, then it should be up to the locals to assess a property tax to support that activity. Are we likely to see that? No, we're not likely to see a major change like that. Be some conversation about it, but not much of a change in that regard. So I don't see a lot in the area of property tax restrictions, modifications, freezes, caps in this next budget. Not too likely.
Or bringing back any kind of state tax.
Very, very unlikely we would bring back any kind of a state tax. We have the forest mill tax, property tax. We have a real estate transfer fee, 30 cents, I think 30 cents per thousand. Highly unlikely that either of those would change. I'd be very, very surprised.
Well, Mark, I want to thank you so much. Great stuff, good stuff.
And even better coming next with Dale Knapp. And I just one personal note, personal privilege, pleases the body. Dick, you've been such a tremendous friend over the years. I've enjoyed every moment we have spent together, and you are one of my heroes, and I just wanted to, maybe the board shouldn't hear that, but I think the world of you. Thank you for inviting me up to talk with the board.
You're always welcome, and you're always very impressive, Mark. As I said, you're one of the best leaders I've ever worked with in my life. At my age, I've worked with a lot of them. So
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you to the board. And Dale.
Good morning. First, before I get started here, let me just make a couple of comments on what Mark was talking about. One, in terms of revenue, especially at the state level, the state budget, we're talking about what the budget's going to look like next year, et cetera. He mentioned that economists are always wrong, and he's right. And when I make forecasts, I always say, I know I'm going to be wrong. It's just how wrong am I going to be? And hopefully it's just a little bit. And that's what generally happens. We're in an unprecedented situation. We have never shut down the economy for a month and a half, 2 months, and then tried to restart it. Have had to deal with this uncertainty of COVID, what's going to happen with cases. And to give you a sense of the uncertainty going forward, the Federal Reserve, when they have their meetings, they have about 20 to 30 economists there that all make projections for the next year in terms of GDP growth and those kinds of things. Typically, the difference between the most pessimistic and the most optimistic economists is about 0.5%. So, for example, in 2019, they were looking at GDP growth for 2020. The range of projections was 2.1% to 2.6%. So they know they're going to be wrong. And so what you do is you look at it. They just met in June. The range of projections for 2018 was -1% to 7% growth. So they have no idea. We have no idea. The Department of Revenue puts out economic forecasts quarterly. They're now doing it monthly. And they have a note at the top saying, we're going to be wrong. Things are changing so fast. We're going to keep updating. So we don't really know what next year is going to look like. It's really uncertain. And let me just talk about the property tax for a second here. Thing to realize, your net new construction number that's going to come out this fall is based on what happened in 2019. Okay, so your allowable levy for next year is essentially already set. We just don't know exactly what that number is. Where this pandemic is going to hurt you is the following year. So the net new construction that's happening now, which is probably significantly less than it was going to be, is going to affect your 2022 budget. So keep that in mind. This year, it's already set. The net new construction is going to affect your budget in a couple of years. And then before I get to my presentation, I noticed the Green Book is here, which is good. We've been doing that for 3 years now. This is the 3rd year. Each year we listen to, we get a lot of feedback on it, and it's generally been very good. So last year we updated a little bit. We added some new measures that people wanted. This year we did something a little bit different. One of the things we found is that county officials that use it oftentimes are looking at a variety of measures at one time. And so they're paging through the book. So in the back, what you have is a county summary. So you can quickly pull out your county, and it'll have where you are on every one of the measures, what the state average is, and where you rank on every one of those measures. So really handy, one piece. And so we'd love to get your feedback on what you think of it. And hopefully next year we'll have something else moving forward. So I'm going to talk about finances and the sales tax and what COVID-19 has been doing to the sales tax.
And I'm going to try to find it for you. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So as a preface, when in late March, Mark and I sat down and we decided one of the things we knew was going to happen with, and we can see that it was actually just before We started the project just before the state shut down. But we knew that this was going to have an impact on county sales tax. But we decided that we were going to put out a piece that gave a range of what your sales tax, what kind of sales tax loss you can expect for the year. And we did two scenarios. And I'll tell you, we were wrong. We were wrong. And we updated that when we got more information on sort of what was happening. We updated that at the end of May. Most recently, I created a sales tax tool, which is very easy to use. It shows you where you are currently in terms of sales tax collections. And then you can pick from a range of what you think the rest of the year is going to look like, about 2% down, 3% or whatever, and it'll then spit out a total for the year, sort of where you, so you can sort of play with it and come up with a range of forecasts. So you can go to the next slide. Actually, you can go to two, well, let me just briefly, I sort of went through a quick timeline of sort of the major events. For Wisconsin, February 5th, and I didn't realize it was that early, the first COVID case here. By mid-March, the schools were closed. March 24th, we had the safer at home order, and then which essentially shut things down for about a month. And then they extended that to just past Memorial Day, and May 13th, the Supreme Court shut that down. So during the end of March and April, we had a uniform policy statewide. And we thought, okay, that'll make it easy then to kind of project what's going on with sales taxes. The problem is you can't predict human behavior, and there was a lot of things going on. You can go to the next slide. So there's been some macro impacts of this. Real GDP, gross domestic product in the U.S. Was down 5% in the first quarter. In a couple of weeks, we'll get the numbers for the second quarter. The consensus is real GDP is going to be down 35% in the second quarter. We know about unemployment soaring and starting to come back down. Wisconsin's actually doing a little bit better than the nation. In fact, our rate in May came down to 8.5%, which to me was really surprising. Generally, I don't trust the monthly numbers a lot. I like, they're on a small sample size. So I think ultimately we'll know that what these rates are, and I think they'll end up being a little bit higher. But what really throws off one of the things that throws off the sales tax numbers is, especially in our initial estimates, we didn't know all of the federal stimulus at the time that was going to come about. So we have, the $1,200 stimulus payments, the extra $600 a week in federal unemployment payments. All of that helped buoy consumption in the state. And you also have the situation of people that are working from home. And I use my wife and I as an example. We're both working from home, so we're not spending some of the money on lunches or dining out or other things. And so we've reduced our spending in that area, but we've also done, we actually done some home remodel projects. And one of the things we've seen is everybody around the state seems to be doing home remodeling. That's one of the things that's been going on. But so there's been some strange things going on. We can go to the next slide. So let's talk about county revenues. So this is generally what county revenues look like. And every county is a little bit different. But state aid and property taxes are, 2/3 of your revenues generally. Those won't be affected this year for the most part. Federal aid, uncertain exactly what that's going to end up looking like this year. There are some fees and charges that are taking a hit, and it really depends on the county. So counties that have golf courses, museums, those kinds of things, revenues from those are obviously down. So other fees and charges, that's sort of up in the air. What I'm going to focus on is the one that we really know is been very volatile, and that's the sales taxes. So statewide, it's about 8%, but it varies quite a bit. You can go to the next slide. So Dane County, Marathon, Ozaki Stock, it's a fairly substantial part of their budget, 12%. You get to Adams, Bayfield, Florence, and other smaller counties, it's less than 5%. So the impact on your budget really, it depends on where you're at, and Waupaca is fairly average in this case. You can go to the next slide. So this is what happened in March and April. So when we first started thinking about this, we were thinking, okay, March and April, the economy was basically shut down. We're going to see declines in sales taxes throughout the state. And for the most part, we did, much of the state. Sauk County, especially hard hit, and Sauk County is going to have a real struggle this year. They were down 31%. But notice all of the blue counties where sales taxes in March and April were actually up over the prior year. In Waupaca County during those 2 months, down, but down slightly, down 3.1%. What's happened in May is Waupaca County is actually up 7.5% over the prior year. So for the 3 months since this started, you're actually up 0.7% from last year. And the early part of the year was actually generally very good. So at this point, you're hanging in there. You're doing all right. You're up on the year. The question is what happens going forward, and that we don't know about. Much of the loss that we were projecting was coming from reduced sales tax collections over the rest of the year. And as I mentioned, we just don't know about what's happening. You can go to the next slide. Obviously, restaurants and bars and hotels were shut down, and all you see is red. Waupaca County, March and April, in terms of sales tax activity in those kinds of venues, down 40% from the prior year. So a big hit in that. You can go to the next slide. But retail sales, and this is where this was really surprising. The amount of blue in terms of retail sales just blew me away. In March and April, when people were essentially at home, yet retail numbers were way up. Online sales were up, depending on the county, between 60 and 120% over the prior year. So people were going to Amazon, going to other places. And most of the places that saw increases were smaller rural counties. And I think what's happening, and I don't have complete evidence of this, but I think what's happening is those counties oftentimes weren't the big retail centers. And so residents historically were going to neighboring urban counties for a lot of their purchases, to the Walmarts, to the Targets, et cetera. Now with the stay-at-home orders, they were less likely to do that. And so they were buying online or locally. And so we saw big increases in terms of retail. Now that's good for those local economies, that they're now buying local. And maybe that will help as we go forward. What's ahead? That I don't know. I just don't know. You know, I talked about the variance in forecast in terms of what's going on next year. I'm still having trouble thinking about, especially given the recent spike in cases, what next fall looks like. You know, we're talking about schools, whether those are going to be online and not, and to the extent that those are going to be virtual, there's daycare problems that we have to deal with, and so there's a lot of variances. So what does the recovery look like? In my opinion, you know, at this point, I think the Fed has supported the economy, and they've done a good job of that. I'm not terribly optimistic that a second federal package is going to pass, or if it's going to pass, the House and Senate are really at odds. So I'm not sure, and if it does pass, you know, it's probably not going to have the unemployment piece in it. And so there's some other things that it won't have. So at some point, the economy is going to take a hit, whether it's a small long-term hit or another sharp decline. I just don't know. So what we're doing at the County Association and Forward Analytics, we're just trying to keep you updated on the most recent data we have on sales taxes, on other, on unemployment, et cetera, in the counties, so that you can get a sense of what's going on and help you plan. I just wrote a piece for the Counties Association magazine on budgeting during a pandemic, you know, as you start thinking about budgeting for next year. And, you know, I talk about how difficult it's going to be because the level of uncertainty is through the roof. You know, and I end with plan for the worst and hope for the best. And I think that's, at this point, the best we can do. Keep, you know, stay updated on where you're at, and use the tools that we're providing, you know, to play out a couple of different scenarios in terms of what at least the sales tax look like. You know, the state aids and those things are pretty much set for next year. I don't think we're going to see cuts. It's the aids, et cetera, for the following year that are going to be have to worry about. So with that, I'll take any, if anybody has any questions.
Questions for Dale? Questions for Dale? Yes, thank you so much, Dale. Good stuff. Thanks for making the trip up here too. Hey, I don't have any report today. That was it with Mark O'Connell and Dale up here. So we're going to appointments, Jill.
Yes, we have an appointment for Judy Olson to a 3-year term as a citizen member to the Regional ADRC Advisory Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Lair for approval, and a second by Supervisor Murphy. Any questions?
Which, Gerald Murphy? I'm sorry, I wasn't looking up. Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. 10B, appoint Supervisor Golding to a 3-year term to the Regional ADRC Advisory Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Lair, second by Supervisor Jerry Murphy. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion's carried.
Appointment of Gloria Legalski to the 3-year term as a citizen member to the Nutrition Advisory Council.
Motion by Supervisor Lair, and a second by Supervisor Nygaard. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Appoint Barb Bartel to a 3-year term as a citizen member to the Nutrition Advisory Council.
Motion by Supervisor Lair. Second by Supervisor Vasquez. Any questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, announcements, Jill?
In your packet, there's information on our 2020 census dashboard. Self-response report was included, as well as the Waupaca County Library usage in 2020. And then, of course, the WCDC June report.
Thank you. Did everyone get the Packer schedule for the refrigerator and the batcher? You don't know what's going to happen yet, but if you don't, come on, I got extras here. For that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by
Supervisor Zog.
Mr. Zog and second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. This is beautiful. Thank you very much.